Are you aware of any personality traits of people who are likely to falsely confess?
Low IQ, highly suggestible, always attempting to solve the immediate stress factor, get the interrogators off my back and just let me go home. Naively assumes that they can all straighten it out later on. It's extremely difficult for the average person to believe that someone would confess to a crime they didn't do. And what I didn't like about this confession is that most of it emanated from questions right off the bat, without any narrative of any length at all, without any descriptions about feelings or conversations or anything. I just don't understand, if he was in fact involved in this crime, how he made a mistake on the time factor. And the thing that really bothers me is the ligature, what was used to tie up the victims. Now, he certainly knows the difference between shoelaces and a rope. That should have been a signal that something was radically wrong. That's when the question should have been more probing to determine whether or not he was making it up or giving a valid confession.
Dr. Offshay, could you give us some examples of the police being coercive, leading, or suggestive during the course of the interrogation?
Yes, I can. Perhaps the most powerful example, in my opinion, is the example of the 8 revisiting of the question of the time at which the killings occurred. The first example occurs on page 3. Detective Ridge says, "All right, when did you go with them?" Mr. Miskelly says, "That morning." Detective Ridge asks, "I'm not saying when they called you, I'm saying what time was it that you were actually there in the park?" Mr. Miskelly says, "About noon." Detective Ridge now says, "Okay, was it after school had let out?" This is immediately after Jesse saying it's at noon. He's now suggesting it must be later by saying, "Is it after school let out?" Jesse says yes. Detective Ridge follows up with his victory on page 24. And this time, Detective Ridge says, and I quote, "Okay, the night you were in the woods, had you all been in the water?" Jesse replies, "Yeah, we've been in the water. We were in it that night, playing around in it." This is the first time in the record that it is directly suggested to Jesse that the correct answer is this happened at night.